All right, so you've made it through the part of the day where you're learning about all the tech, all the tools that fit in your tool belt of storytelling. You've learned a lot of good stuff, and you probably bring a wealth of knowledge with you from your jobs and your experience as a visual storyteller to this workshop. You're going to employ all of those skills, all the things you've either learned or brought with you over the next 48 hours to tell, hopefully, an amazing story, a story that connects. I believe that storytelling is connecting. It's the foundation of it. But let's get to the beginning of all of that. What's a story? What is a story? That's a question. Anybody have an answer? Yeah?
Timeline of events.
Okay. Wow. That's you and David Mamet. Nice. Anybody else? What's a story? Yes, sir.
I would just add to that, it should have some kind of like conflict.
Yeah, conflict, an important part of a story. Found this quote pretty great for us as military or government storytellers. Stories constitute the single most powerful weapon in a leader's arsenal. Anything else on a story? What's a story? Yes, sir.
I'm going to go from the theater perspective, beginning, middle, end.
Yeah, structure. Joan Didion said, we tell ourselves stories in order to live. All right, so we know what a story is. It's a progression of events. It has a structure. What makes a story good?
Conflict or change.
Okay.
Character development.
Character development.
The impact.
Impact. All right. Got a quote from another person here. Oh, that's me. What makes a story good is how we tell it, okay? Every story has potential. Every story has promise. But every story can be told in a different way. I used to run an exercise down at 1st Combat Camera Squadron where I would come in and give everyone footage from a story I had produced or shot in industry, and I would take them all and give them the exact same footage, music, everything, that transcripts from the interviews that I had had when producing that story, and send 4 or 5 people off in separate directions to edit their own version of that story. And invariably, everybody would come back, and there were 5 different stories, and a 6th, the one that I had put together. And we would watch them all, and we would see similarities, and we would see differences. Some would be emotional, some would be funny. Same exact story, same exact footage, all shot the same. But in the editing process, the story was told differently. What makes a good story? It's how you tell it. I've asked the team to give you all this little 4-page document, and I've been handing this out for, Juan, more than 10 years since I've been here. I've modified it slightly, but there are 13 principles, in my opinion, that I have found, and you may know more, but after telling stories for a while, for decades, I realized there are things that I'm doing, there are things that I've picked up or things that I've naturally progressed to that help me tell a good story. All right, I want to run through these. My whole presentation isn't about just these things, but I have always gotten such good feedback about this document and these principles, not only in helping folks tell stories here at the workshop, but when they would return to their jobs, they said they'd keep it on the desk or in the drawer and pull it out, and it would help them when they were doing their work to tell their stories. And so that's why I still print it out, give it to you guys. And we'll run through it real quick because I think it's helpful when you're here at the workshop wanting to do some good work in a short period of time. All right, how do we tell a good story? We set the scene. We establish a sense of time and place. We don't confuse our audience. We say, here we are, and here's why. Now, how do we technically do that? Is it a wide shot showing the neighborhood? Is it some close-ups, a series of close-ups showing details that allow us as a viewer to know where we are and maybe why? It's probably not a medium shot showing action. Otherwise, there's no beginning. There's no structure to that story, right? We're going to get to that point here in a second. Set the scene. Give us a sense of time and place. Develop interesting characters. Somebody said characters over in here. You did. That's right. Give us someone to root for or root against, right? Give us a Tony Soprano or any other really interesting, a Jon Snow, a Khaleesi, right? Give us an interesting character. You guys watch Game of Thrones? Oh yeah, all right, good. We're on the same page. Okay, details. Highlight some interesting things about this person or these people and their story. Be specific. Give us details. Give us something to grab onto, some granularity, right? Something that we say, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Wow, fascinating. Now I'm engaged. Narrow your scope. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Pick a few things that you're going to progress through in that structure, in that arc with that character, and let your story be that nice little section versus something so large that you can't fit it all into the box. Conflict, somewhere up in here. Conflict. Show the conflict. And hopefully, ultimately, the resolution to that conflict. Why do we care? What's the struggle? What makes me, again, root for or against this character? And give your story structure. A beginning, a middle, and an end. This was traditionally the 3-act play. I just read this, actually, this morning as I was brushing up on this speech here. And it was originally attributed to Aristotle, and I think commonly in film schools or books that I've read, the 3-act story structure was attributed so. But then I found out that in some of this reading that is erroneous and that Aristotle championed a 2-act story structure and that it was Sid Field in his well-known, at least in the film school circles, book on storytelling from 1979 called Screenplay, The Foundations of Screenplay, that established the 3-act structure, beginning, middle, and end, which seems on the nose and easy, but it's a relatively fairly new concept that we adhere to and we follow. Setup, confrontation, and resolutions. Take us on a journey. Let's see that story arc. Reveal a change or growth in your characters. Stir our emotions. And that's what my talk's going to be about today. I'm going to go into that, and I'll tell you why in a second. But stir our emotions. Give us a reason to care. Engage us as your audience. And frankly, engage yourself, right? If there's no reason to connect, then why are we here? Make me feel. Make your story visually alluring, right? Was it Sam, were you doing the gimbal stuff yesterday? Yeah, I thought I saw that online. Great stuff, right? If there's time, if not, take the time, right, to engage us. It's a visual medium. Now, can you get by without it with a great story? You probably can, but you want to get that good story, that how do I take it to that next level? Take the time, or at least understand what it takes to give us great visuals. Epic wide shots. Great granular details that make us go, wow, that's interesting. I'd have to walk up so close to get that. But you, the storyteller, are in there, tight on the hands, tight on the eyes. A detail in the environment that we wouldn't have otherwise seen. That's visual storytelling, in addition to what we might be hearing or that they might be saying. Unity of creative vision. That's my thing. but I noticed it because years ago I was working at VH1 and MTV as an editor early in my career. And we did a lot of documentaries where the interviews had been shot by various producers. These were like Frankendocs, right? Where you go into the archives and you get this interview or that footage, and then producers, directors doing new interviews. And sometimes it would be hard to make these productions look like they were, their genesis came from one creative mind or a hive of aligned creatives. And I realized that they weren't as powerful as the shows, the films where you had that, where all the interviews looked the same, where the scenes were driven by a similar look. You know, these epic wides with a big title over it, right? You see that sometimes now. Can you imagine if one establishing shot had, you know, a high font or a high point font, you know, big, thick over it, and then down in the corner, the next one said, you know, you're in Peoria, Illinois, and then the next one was like Baltimore, the old way. It would feel disconnected, right? We don't see that in professional productions, but we do see it when you either do this Frankendoc or, frankly, a lot of times when producers produce something and they're just kind of going through it, right? Where they don't understand that we should have the graphics all the same. I'm trying something here and I'm trying something there. Keep it simple and keep it the same. That's a great way to make your production feel like it is, frankly, sometimes better than it is, right? Unity of creative vision. If you're going to color correct something with a heavy skew to the sepia, do it throughout. Or if you're doing flashbacks that way, then make sure all the flashbacks are that way, right? We may not think about it, we may just naturally do it, but I've given it a term that I haven't heard or seen anywhere in any book or in film school: unity of creative vision. Plan ahead, pre-produce. Didn't James do a pre-production seminar just a bit ago? Everything can be, like, sometimes in documentary, you don't know your story or how it's going to turn out. But avoid that trap of saying, we'll fix it in post. We're just going to shoot everything and we'll find the story later. No. Know what your story is, or at least have a plan for it. You can deviate when you're out there. You can deviate in the edit room. But if you've got a plan, you're probably going to succeed, and you're going to tell a better story and hopefully a good story. Keep the audience asking, what's next? Throw them a curveball, right? They think your story is here, here, and then here. Take them here, and in Act 2, throw them a curveball. Whoa, all of a sudden, they're off, they're engaged. You know who did this in a great way? He did it right in Act 1, but we don't find out until Act 3. M. Night Shyamalan in Sixth Sense. I hope this isn't a spoiler, but Bruce Willis is dead the whole movie, right? We don't know it. I saw it again recently. Yeah, sorry guys. Titanic, the boat sinks. I know. I'm just gonna ruin it all for you. You're gonna have to find new shows. So I watched that M. Night Shyamalan movie again recently, and you know, with knowing full well that he's dead the whole time, and I remembered the first time I saw it, and my mind was blown. And it's so interesting to follow that bouncing ball through. And when you know, it doesn't, you know, it seems obvious, but I don't know anyone who watching that film without knowing the ending had any idea that that was what was going on. So kudos to him. That was quite a left turn. You may not be able to pull off something quite so dramatic or quite so pronounced, but try to give us something in your story that we didn't see coming, right? And maybe don't show it right off the top, right? Don't give us that little piece. Take us into it a bit and then turn left. Okay, it's my last one, and I hope it's a strong finish, but in addition to that story structure, beginning, middle, and end, we hear it, there should be an end, but we don't do it all the time. I'm going to tell you finish strong, or at least finish. When you're out there or when you're planning, have an idea of where you're going, where it ends. Even if it's not the end of someone's story or the story, let it be the end of this chapter that you're telling us. Do it well, use your storytelling tools, bring it to an end. Bring that music and that sound down, linger on a nice long shot. Let me know, let the audience know, hey, we're done here. Thanks for watching, okay? All right, those are the 13 principles. Hang on to the paper. We'll talk about that later or as an aside if you'd like to. Today, I want to talk about that one. Stir emotion. Here's my favorite quote of the day. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. I'll add, people will forget the facts of your story, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Read it again and know this. No one's going to remember everything that, if you're doing a documentary or subject said. No one's going to remember the dialogue of your script in its entirety. They're going to remember a few of those, right? The famous quotes. I feel the need for speed. But that movie, Top Gun, wasn't about what those characters said. It was about how you feel. How many people joined the military because of Top Gun or another film that they saw over the years? No? Just out of a sense of patriotism naturally developed by your upbringing in these great United States. For me, it was Top Gun, Red Dawn, and a few other movies in the 80s, you know. The Soviet threat. That's why I studied Russian in college, too. But that's another story. Why did I decide to talk about emotion today? Well, I'm kind of all in my feels. Here's my story. That's my daughter. She just graduated from high school, and yesterday we dropped her off at college, or the day before, and I flew here directly. That's why I couldn't be in yesterday. It's an interesting time. Anybody have any kids, or they've dropped off at college yet, or have gone on? You have kids, though. Anybody have kids? All right. So you get the idea. It was 18 years ago. My wife at the time, Isabella's mother, was in labor for about 33 hours. It was exhausting for me. I am assuming for her as well. As an aside, I think number 14 needs to be humor, right? I need to put that in there. Yeah, write that in yourselves. I'm going to add that to the thing. Although I love the number 13. I'll have to combine two others. Isabella was born on 29 June 2006 in New York City. She's a New Yorker by birth. We left 6 months later for California, and that's where she's grown up. But she is a New Yorker by birth, New York. Did you grow up in New York? Yeah? Born up in Syracuse? All right, Syracuse there. Any Syracuse people in the crowd? All right. When Isabella was born, normally they lay a baby on its mother's chest, right, to forge that connection. And my ex-wife wasn't able to do that. They had some complications, and they were taking care of that. The doctors were, and so I had the privilege of my daughter being laid right here across my chest. I was the first to have skin-to-skin contact with that little girl. Her story went on. There were sports, which she eventually eschewed in favor of the arts and theater, and singing, dancing, and acting. For the last 6 years, she never got anything below an A, not even an A-. She maintained an unweighted 4.0 and got herself into a pretty amazing college out there in California, the University of California, Berkeley, where we dropped her off, as I said, on Tuesday. She was nervous. She was kind of being very anxious all day. We were anxious. It was an interesting mix of the end of one chapter of her story, a long arc of being a child and taking that first step into adulthood. There we are, proud parents, and we're not too worried because she's got a great roommate from Brooklyn, and everything is off, and I'm getting texts about all the fun things going on. So there you go. There's a story about why I'm talking about emotions today. All right, how do we stir emotion? How do we connect with our audience? That one's just a rhetorical, unless somebody has a good one. All right. These are my opinions. You have to develop an insatiable appetite for all the things but mostly for people. What makes people tick, both your audience and your subject. Okay, this is the time when I'm going to pick out a few people and you're going to tell me someone's story. Very briefly, you got 3 minutes to tell me the story that you should have gathered in 3 minutes. First, I'll take a volunteer, and then I'm going to voluntold someone if there are no volunteers. Who wants to tell me a quick story? 1 minute. How's that? 1 minute. All right, I'm going to pick on people. Who haven't I heard from? Who looks confident? All right. Green shirt, white stripes. Tell me the story.
I met Alexis French. She's stationed at DMA.
Speak up.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
can y'all hear me now? Take a stand. All right,
yeah, stand up.
All right.
Here.
So I met Alexis French today. She's a Marine.
Check, check.
All right. Oh, we got a mic now. Even better. She is from Kansas. She is adopted. I thought that was pretty cool. She didn't know the origin of her last name, even though it is French. I was very curious about that, if she actually was French, but she did not know. Now I got 2 mics, even better. All right. So y'all can hear me, right? All right, cool. Where are we at now? 40 seconds? All right, cool. She doesn't know exactly what she wants to do with life yet, so she's still figuring that out, which is totally normal because she's, got plenty of time to figure that out. Unlike me, I'm over the hill. But yeah, so that's pretty much all I got from Alexis French.
All right. Any interesting details?
Yeah, she's a Marine. She's from Kansas.
How emotionally connect with it? What's that? What's the piece of it?
Emotionally connect. For me, how I connected with her is I grew up in Chickasaw Nation, Oklahoma for a while, and so when she told me she was Native American, I was like, oh, okay, cool. We got a little, conjoinedness there. But emotionally, I guess about as far as I got, because it just reminded me of childhood nostalgia, things like that, because I haven't been there since I was like 11.
Fantastic. All right. Let's connect in 3 minutes. Nicely done. What's your name? Lance. Lance. I like that. Lance Valencia. That sounds... Any of you guys see the Tom Hanks directed film? He was Larry Corona, but I think the girl called him Lance. That reminds me of that. It's a great film. Okay. Who am I picking on next? All right. Tell me the story.
Yes, sir. Mike?
Yep.
Okay, so I met Joel. He is a Marine vet. He's currently in Dargan, Virginia, and he loves cars. That is all I know of him.
Okay. That's an entry point, though, right? If you had more time, you might have talked about the cars. Might have found out what his first car was. What's your first car?
Subaru BRZ.
Huh?
2013 Subaru BRZ.
Why'd you buy that car?
I was young and dumb and had like an 8% interest rate. It was terrible.
Yeah, 8% interest.
8%,
How
yes.
did that happen?
I don't know.
A bank? Did you get it from a mobster? How'd you get the loan?
Oh, I got it from Navy Federal.
Navy Federal?
Yeah, actually
Wow,
E3. I was a Lance Corporal, yeah.
All right.
First day at my unit, and I was like, hey, can someone drive me to get this car? So,
You know, USAA has lower rates.
I know that now.
Yeah, all right. This presentation is sponsored by USAA. Or I wish it was. Okay. Anybody sitting next to someone who's not a Marine? Is this a room full of Marines? Because I'm a big fan of Marines. Are you sitting next to a Marine?
I am a Marine.
Are these guys Marines?
She's not a Marine.
Okay. I look like Diane. Stand up. Tell her story.
So hi, I'm Diana. What I learned was she's from Pennsylvania. Zoe. Her name's Zoe. I know she had a dog. Her dog was Lola, right? Great Dane, weighs more than her. Yeah. But I mean, I guess that's expected because, you know, Great Danes are pretty big. Her family's all pretty much in Pennsylvania, you said, right? Which she also asked me about my family, and my family's like in Florida. So it was, you know, it must be nice having family around, you know. But that's pretty much all I know.
Okay.
Oh, she's Air Force. But,
Air Force.
yeah.
All right.
All right, thank you. Okay, did you guys find in your conversations when you found a commonality? We lived near each other. We both drive cars, right? Number 14, humor. Gotta get that in there. That you felt closer. You felt, oh, I've got a connection here. I'm connecting, right? When you find those commonalities. So when I am assigned a story or I pitch it and I'm going to go shoot something, even if I'm on a one-day shoot, I'm flying in or out, I usually try to have dinner with whomever I'm working with on that story. And why do I do that? The night before. I do that because when you're rolling camera, you're rolling tape, you're recording onto digital media. I'm going to need a lot more time than that. Just go ahead and put that away. Because we're connecting, and they're laughing. If they weren't laughing, I wouldn't need as much time. I'll show up the night before. I'll ask someone to go to dinner. Hey, you want to grab a bite? It'd be great to connect beforehand, right? I get a lot of FaceTime, a lot of eye contact. We're talking. And I get to find out beyond my plan, what's the real story here and how am I connecting? Also, if there is an emotional connection, even at that point, I'm not talking about tears. Laughter is an emotional connection, right? If there is anything that we connect on, now this person's probably going to feel more comfortable with me the next day. They're going to trust me more. They're going to open up more. And all of those things that I want from them, that trust, that emotion, that connection is going to come out, okay? That's how I do it. That's how I find a way to emote and connect. Okay, who is this?
Bartender that served last night.
Yeah? What's their name?
Georgetown. That's what I called her. She just graduated.
Okay. What's her name? Sarah? It's not Sarah. Her name is EP. Her name is EP. That's what I said. EP? Like, as in the initials? Yeah. EP. Oh, well, how did you get that name? Do you have a longer name? She does. It's Elizabeth Parker is her name. But it's hyphenated. It's not Elizabeth, first name, Parker, middle name. So that's interesting. Why did it end up there? Well, she told me when her brother was born, her older brother, her mother and father had an agreement that first name would be from mom's family, the middle name would be from dad's family. And then when she was born, it was supposed to reverse. But mom had a change of heart. Mom wasn't happy with the middle name on EP. She wanted to be part of the first name. So both names were assigned, and dad was, whatever you want, dear. We'll just go. He didn't want to fight. So Elizabeth Parker became E-P, E-P. That's her whole first name, EP. Obviously, that's how she got the nickname, EP. I told her, hey, you can change your name. How old is she? Anybody know how old she is? Come on, you guys were there all night long last night. Nobody talked to this girl and got her story? She's 25 years old. I said, you're old enough legally to change your name. She said, I have changed my name. Parker is now my middle name. It's no longer part of my first name. She said, it was getting so difficult. In school, her name was always wrong. On her driver's license, flying, right? Because your name has to be exactly what your legal name is. So it was always very difficult. So she changed her name. But her nickname was EP, and it sticks. And that's why behind the bar last night was EP. All right. So I'm assuming that if nobody really knew her name, you don't know the rest of her story. But I do. And I'm going to tell you that. I wrote it down so I didn't have to go from memory. But pretty interesting. And I say this because don't we, every year we get a bar story, don't we? Ray, right? There's like a bar story. Oh, there's this bar, they make the best cocktails. Or there's this bar, it's been in the family for 100 years. And we go into the bar and we see a bunch of drinks being served. And it's interesting on the surface of it. But ultimately, sometimes, most of the time, I feel like we miss the real human connection and the real story of that bar, or establishment, or restaurant, which is the people's story. EP is from Pawleys Island, South Carolina, originally, which is not far from the 1st Combat Camera Squadron, where I used to be, and a lot of the people in the back of this room. I don't know, do we have anyone from Charleston this year? Okay, cool. 1st, 4th? 4th. All right, good to have you here. Let's chat later. She went to school at Georgetown. Who was calling her Georgetown? She got her master's degree in conflict resolution. Very interesting. She's been doing an internship at the U.S. Institute for Peacekeeping, which may or may not work out to be a career for her, but it is a good start. She's been bartending at that bar for 5 years. She lives here in the neighborhood with her boyfriend, and she's not sure what the future holds. We started talking about food because I ordered a salmon salad, but I didn't want the onions. And she said, yeah, I don't like onions too. She said, but what I really don't like, she said, how do you feel about tomatoes? Well, they're all right. She said, I hate tomatoes. I hate tomatoes. That's an emotional word, isn't it? I hate tomatoes. Why do you hate tomatoes, EP? Well, I hate tomato sandwiches. White bread, sliced tomatoes, and mayonnaise, which is actually where I brought up, I said, are you from the South? And she said, Pawleys Island, South Carolina. And I said, oh, I used to live in Charleston, Mount Pleasant, not far from there, 30 minutes away. We were connecting. Yeah, she said, I used to eat those as a kid, and I hated them. And that's why she doesn't like tomatoes now as a grown-up. I started noticing a theme here, and I said, your mom used to make you those sandwiches, didn't she? She said, yeah, and your mom used to make you eat those sandwiches, didn't she? Yeah. I thought about when she said that her mom insisted on the name being in her first name and how that made her life hard. She didn't seem happy about those two things. I said, you don't have a very good relationship with your mom, do you? She said, no, we're estranged. I haven't talked to her in years. I said, I'm sorry. That's tough. I know how that can be. I had a similar thing with my dad. She said, yeah, but I have a great relationship with my dad. And I thought, well, that's wonderful. And I said, can I take your picture? Because I'm going to tell a story about you tomorrow. Any one of us in here had the opportunity to do what I did at 10 o'clock when I got in last night and went to say hi to my friends. I was just ordering a ginger ale. But I started talking with her. She's a very real person with a very real story. You can find hundreds of these stories around here, ones that have all of the things, but at the heart of it have an emotional connection, right? And you can tell those in an emotional way that makes me connect, that makes us connect, that makes all the people in this room connect with your subjects and with your story. Go buy more drinks from EP and Tipper Well tomorrow. Tonight, if you go there. All right. All right. So you're saying I'm out of time. 5-minute warning. That was about a 15-minute gap between the 10-minute warning and the 5-minute warning. You guys want to watch something? You guys want to watch a story and I'll talk about it, a connecting thing again, or do you want to ask questions? Those are your two options. We'll have time for questions later. Let me show you this thing. I don't think I'll have time to show many stories, but okay, Invictus Games is a Wounded Warrior Games that started by Prince Harry, the former royal who now lives in Santa Barbara, where I live. Very interesting thing, but yeah, he's a veteran himself, a helicopter pilot in the British military, and he established the Invictus Games, I don't know, about 10, 15 years ago as a place for wounded and otherwise fully able-bodied veterans to compete. And it's an international Wounded Warrior Games. We have our Wounded Warrior Games, which are within the U.S. So in 2016, ESPN broadcast those, and I was on the TV team producing some feature stories on a few of the athletes. This guy right here is Gulati Tadua of the Republic of Georgia. He plays on the seated volleyball team for those guys. Georgia was an underdog. They don't have a whole lot of big sports and athletes, so their seated volleyball team was promising at those games, and it was really their best shot to win a medal. Went over there to Georgia, met Gulati. He doesn't speak a lick of English. I don't speak a lick of Georgian. We both speak just a hair of Russian, but it wasn't enough to connect. So for the first part of our shoot, we were in the capital, Tbilisi, and we were at his military base, and we did his interview in a gym there, and it was tough. There's that language barrier. We had a translator, but he and I didn't have much of a connection, right? I'm just showing up with this guy. We can't even talk, so very hard to establish that emotional rapport with Gulati originally. I'm going to show you the story. You'll see the interview can be kind of tough. You may think it supports the subject matter because he's talking about a very serious thing. But as the storyteller, as the producer, as the filmmaker, I was having a tough time. And I was nervous that this thing wouldn't have an emotional heart to it. Here's the story. I'll play it for you and then we'll talk about it after. Okay. Do I have enough volume on this thing?
დავიბადე ქალაქ ზუგდიდში, ვიზრდები სოფელ განმოხურში. ბავშვობაში ძალიან ცელკი ვიყავი, ვერთობოდი სპორტით, ნადირობით, თევზაობით. ძალიან კარგი სოფელი არის და სამეგობრო ხალხი არის.
In the tiny hamlet of Ganmakuri, Georgia, Gulati Tadua led the relatively uncomplicated life of a small-town farmer with a wife and 2 children. But tensions with the Russian-backed breakaway region to the north of his village compelled him to service in the Georgian army.
სამეზობლოში მეზობელი კაცი მოკლეს. ვიცავდი ჩვენ სოფელს თოფებით ხელში და გადავწყვეტე 2007 წელს დამოსული ვიყავი საკონტრაქტოზე.
თავიდან არ მინდოდა, მაგრამ მე შევეჩვი რამე სამშობლოს გულისთვის წავიდა და ჩვენი გულისთვის.
In August 2008, tensions between Russia and Georgia boiled over into full-blown war, and Gulati found himself and his unit right in the heart of the action, in the South Ossetian capital of Shinvali.
ვიყავი საბრძოლო მედიკორი. აბომბის დროს დაიჭრა რამოდენიმე ბიჭი, კიდეც მოკვდა რამოდენიმე. ამ დროს დაჭრილი ბიჭის გადასარჩენად შევედი, რომელსაც ბარძაღი ჰქონდა მოტეხილი. ავიყვანე ხელში და ვცდილობდი, რომ გამომეყვანა, სადაც ჩვენი სამედიცინო პუნქტი იყო. და მაგ დროს მოხდა კასეტური ბომბები ჩამოყრა რუსული ვერტმფრენებიდან. მაგი დაიღუპა, მე დავიჭერი მუხზე. მერე მოდის ჩემი ამხანაგი თანამებრძოლი და დამიძახა თუ არ აგჭირსო მე ვთხარი თავს უშველე იბომბება ქაურობა და წადი დამტოვე მეთქი და მომაწოდე მე ვთხარი ავტომატი და ამ ბიჭმა არ დამტოვა დაუძახა მეგობრებს და აქეთ გამოვყავდით გორის მიმართულებით ამ დროს გამეთიშა ის ზნობა აზრი ქონება დავკარგე
პირდაპირ აქ ხდებოდა ტრიაჟი, სორტირება ამ დაშავებულების.
მომიყვანეს მახსოვს იგი აქ საწყამ ტერიტორია ეზოში და აქ პერიოდს რო გავიხედე გვერდით გარდაცვლილი ბიჭები იყვნენ ამ დროს მოდის ვიღაცა კალბატონის სახელი არ მახსოვს ეძებდა თავის ნათესავი ჩემი ხო არ არისო და მაშინ ჩემი არტერია საძილემილი მუშაობდა რა და იმ ქალს უთქვია ეს კაცი ცოცხალი ვარიო და მე შემომიყვანეს აქეთ
ტელევიზორში უყურებდი რომ გადიოდა ომი რომ მიდიოდა იმას ცხინვალში ყველაფერს ხედავდით ჩვენ და ძალიან ნერვიულობდით მე ორსულად ვიყავი გიორგიზე მაგ დროს
ეს რო შემემთხვა რომ დავიჭერი მაგაზე ფიქრობდი ოჯახს ვტოვებ, მეუღლეს ვტოვებ, ბავშვებს ვტოვებ და მაგის ფიქრი უფრო მეტად გამიშდა ჩემ თავ მე 100%-იანად 100% ვიყავი დარწმუნებული, გადავრჩებოდი მაგას ფიქრობდი და
რავიგზენი ის იყო ჩემთვის დიდი ბედნიერება ეს რო ცოცხალი იყო თორე ფეხი რო დაკარგული იყო ის თავარია ჩემს გვერდით და ჩემ შვილების გვერდით რო არის
სამხედრო მოსამსახურე მანამდე კი ცოტა გადაღლილი ვიყავი სულ ჩიოდი რატომ მართ გადარჩენა აქვია მეორე დავიბადე ჩემი მეგობრების წყალობით დღესდღეობით ცოცხალი ვარ გარკვეული დროის მერე როცა ცოტა ჯანზე მოვედი დამირეკეს სამედიცინო სამინისტროს თავდაცვის სამინისტროს სამედიცინო ჰოსპიტალიდან არიო დაჭირილებისთვის ჯდომარე ფრენბურთი შილდოსნობა ცურვა ეჭპოსნობა და თუ ჩაერთებიო ამ იმაშიო ორგანიზაციაში უარი არ უთხარი რაც ახასიათებს ჩემ ცხოვრების მიმართ გაუმჯობესებას
ხანაგებთან უფრო სხვანაირი გახდა მანამდე უფრო ნერვიულობდა ჩაკეტილში იყო და ახლა უფრო გახსნილი არის თავის მეგობრებთან დადის
ზემოდან გადაცემები გააკეთა
ჩვენში არ არის რა იქ დაჭრილობა რა ვიცი ასტურში ეს ძლიერ თამაშებში რო გამოვაჩინო კარგი შედეგი
საქართველოს ასახელოს და თავისი ამხანაგები და თავისი ოჯახი.
ერთი აითვალე.
19 ძალიან შვილებისთვის არის თავგადადებული რომ ისწავლონ და იმას უნერგებს რომ ისწავლენ და ეს არის თავარი სწავლა და იმით გამახარება ეუბნება სულ შვილებს.
ჩემ ცხოვრებაში ყველაზე მნიშვნელოვანი რა თქმა უნდა ოჯახი არის სამსახური რო ვარ დაკავებული სპორტით და გამთლიანებულ საქართველოში ცხოვრება
All right. So, when we were filming with Galati, and you kind of pick up on this, in the interview, I was really concerned. Oh, we'll come back to that. I was really concerned because, as I said, it was very tough to connect. And I could see how he had this ability to emote. You can see him in the footage with his buddies, and he's playing volleyball. He's got this personality, but he and I weren't connecting. And that made me worried. How am I going to finish this thing up? Where's my ending? Where do we go to where I show this arc where he is feeling renewed? Even though he's saying the words, how do I use that tool belt of tools? Well, good music selection, right? You can feel that arc. But how do I connect with Galati? Now, there were two places we shot. One was in the capital of Georgia, Tbilisi. The other was in his little village of Ganmakuri. They are hours apart. One is over in the eastern part of the country. The other is on the west coast, over on the Black Sea. And we were all driving in a small van, you know, one of those Euro vans. We're all jammed in, up over the mountain to get over there to his village. And everybody's asleep in the van, and I couldn't sleep. I did a little bit of work, but I was on my phone playing some silly little game that I have on there for my son to pass the time, little car game. And I was just playing it myself to kind of numb out my mind and pass the time because I couldn't sleep. And Galati, he had his son with him. And his son was sitting in front of me, and he wasn't sleeping either. And he turned around and looked over the seat at me. Again, we can't speak. I can't find common ground and say anything to his son, or I would. But I saw he's looking at my phone at the game I'm playing, and I showed him, I said, "You want to play?" He said, "Yeah, I want to try it." And so I showed him, you know, just with my thumbs how to play, and he started playing the game. Really liked it. He's smiling and having a good time. And Galati woke up, and he saw this, and I think he was touched by it. And so we got to his village, and his entire demeanor changed. One, he was at home, and he was comfortable. And two, he had seen that maybe I wasn't connecting with him. We hadn't found common ground through the normal ways that we do talking, getting the story of the bartender behind the bar. But he obviously is a father, as am I, and connected to him through his son. Well, when we're at his house, back up a bit. In Georgia, everybody makes their own wine. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good, but everybody makes their own wine. Very old country, very old school. And so Galati was excited to show me his farm, his family's property, and where he makes his wine. And I thought everything was going good. He was more relaxed as we were shooting in his village with his family, and felt like, hey, we're connecting, we're getting on the same ground here. And then we're in the house, and Galati comes out, and he's holding a shotgun. And I thought, ooh, Jim, you misjudged this situation. You're not connecting. You've really pissed him off. And he pulls out the shotgun and proceeds to dismantle it, which made me a little more comfortable. And then he said, put your hand on the, he made the sign for it. We still can't speak, but put your hand on the bottom of the shotgun. And I did, the barrel. And then he, as you can see, proceeds to fill up the barrel with his homemade wine. And he says, tilt it back. Well, when in Rome or when in Georgia, you don't turn someone down on that in their own house. And I literally shotgunned a barrel full of his wine. Now, if we weren't already connecting at that point, it was very clear that we were. I'm just going to show you this real quick. You saw the interviews in both spots, right? At the military base and at home. And he's just so much more comfortable. You see it there. And then by the end of it. I think he was trying to marry me off to his sister. We're still friends on Facebook, and I get messages from her. I was married at the time, so that wasn't going to be a possibility, but it was a 180-degree turn, and I think because we connected, you feel at the end of that story. And we connected in a very unique and different way, but I stuck with it, tried to connect, tried to make an emotional connection, and I think finally you were able to feel that in the story. Okay, we're going to skip the next couple. I was going to show you a few more pieces, but we did a few other things. We'll skip the NFL pieces. Okay, last thing I'll say, be relentless in your pursuit of a story. A story you know is worth your time in the telling and your audience's time to watch. If you tell it well and connect on a fundamental human level with your audience, that story will be a good story. Okay. Are we done, or I got a couple minutes for questions? Okay, I'll catch up with you later if you need to have any questions answered.
Jim Fabio.
Thanks, guys.